I never planned to reveal my identity for 5 years. I'd been perfectly content being Alex Chen, the quiet junior developer at Quantum Solutions, writing basic code while my alter ego, known only as the Ghost, created some of the most innovative security solutions in Silicon Valley. But Richard Palmer, our new CEO, made sure that couldn't last. The irony of today's executive meeting wasn't lost on me, while Richard stood there ridiculing my latest project proposal. His own company's security infrastructure, the one keeping his precious corporate secrets safe, was built on code I'd written under my anonymous persona. If he only knew that the mature sitting in his conference room was the same developer whose software his company paid millions to license. But let me start from the beginning. 5 years ago, I made a choice, after selling my first security software for a fortune at age 25. I could have lived comfortably as a public figure in the tech world. Instead, I chose anonymity. I created the Ghost identity, a developer known only through encrypted communications and revolutionary code. Meanwhile, I took a junior position at Quantum Solutions, wanting to stay connected to the day-to-day reality of corporate tech. Without the pressure of reputation, it worked perfectly until Richard Palmer took over as CEO 6 months ago. This is, quite frankly, embarrassing. Richard's voice dripped with disdain as he flipped through my proposal, the morning sunlight streaming through the floor to ceiling windows of the conference room cast harsh shadows across his features, making his expression even more severe. Alex, you've been here, 5 years, and this is the level of work you produce. I sat quietly watching him tear apart the intentionally simplified version of my latest security protocol around the table. Other executives shifted uncomfortably. Most of them had worked with me for years, and while they didn't know my secret, they knew I was reliable and hardworking. Look at this architecture, Richard continued, projecting my proposal onto the screen. It's something a first-year computer science student would write. We're Quantum Solutions, not some community college coding boot camp. A few forced chuckles echoed around the room. I noticed Jennifer, our VP of engineering, frowning slightly. She always appreciated my work, even if she thought it was simple, sir. I started maintaining my calm demeanor. If you look at the efficiency metrics, I don't mean to look at anything else. Richard cut me off. I've seen enough. In fact, he straightened his expensive suit jacket, a predatory smile forming on his face. I think it's time we discussed your future at Quantum Solutions. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Actually. A new voice interrupted from the doorway. I'd very much like to look at those efficiency metrics. My heart stopped. I knew that voice. Marcus Dong, CEO of Jiang Technologies, stood in the doorway. His company was not only Quantum's biggest client, but also the primary licensee of the Ghost software. More importantly, he was one of the 3 people in the world who knew my true identity. Richard's demeanor changed instantly, transforming from predatory to sycophantic. In the blink of an eye, Mr. John, we weren't expecting you until this afternoon's meeting. My schedule cleared up early, Marcus replied, his eyes fixed on me with a mix of amusement and concern. I thought I'd come see what Quantum's been developing. He walked into the room, nodding politely to the other executives before focusing on my proposal still displayed on the screen. Interesting architecture, he mused, deceptively simple on the surface, but he zoomed in on a particular section of the code. The efficiency algorithms here are remarkably elegant. In fact, he turned to face me directly, a slight smile playing on his lips. They remind me of another developer's work, someone who's been revolutionizing the security industry for the past 5 years. Richard scoffed. Impossible. This is basic code. Nothing. Like he stopped, abruptly, his face draining of color as Marcus's words sank in. Wait. Richard looked between Marcus and me, realization dawning in his eyes. You're not saying? Marcus smiled fully now. Alex, I believe some introductions are in order, or should I say reintroductions. The room erupted in whispers. Richard's face cycled through shock, disbelief and horror as he finally connected the dots. The junior developer he'd been belittling was the legendary Ghost, the same developer whose software his company paid millions to license. I stood slowly smoothing my simple button-down shirt. "Mr. Palmer," I said, my voice carrying a confidence I'd never shown before. "Perhaps we should discuss those efficiency metrics now." But first, I pulled out my phone and opened an encrypted email app that only the Ghost was known to use. I should mention that your company's entire security infrastructure, the one you praised so highly in last month's shareholder meeting, I wrote all of it. In fact, I typed a quick command and suddenly the screen behind Richard shifted, showing a complex web of security protocols and systems. I've been maintaining it, Pruno, because I care about this company, even while you spent the last 6 months trying to push me out. Richard collapsed into his chair, his expensive suit suddenly seeming too large for him. But the licensing fees we pay the millions go to a shell corporation that funds cybersecurity education for underprivileged students. I finished for him. I never needed the money. What I needed was a place to work where I could stay grounded, where I could remember what real developers face every day until you decided to change that. Jennifer let out a low whistle all this time. Those simple solutions you propose were deliberately scaled down, versions of much more complex systems. I confirm systems that, ironically, we've been paying to license for my other identity. The room had gone completely still. Every eye was on me as 5 years of careful anonymity crumbled away. But strangely, I felt relieved. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destroying someone, it's about letting them destroy their own carefully constructed illusions. Marcus stepped forward. Alex has been instrumental in developing some of the most innovative security solutions in the industry, solutions that have saved companies like ours billions and prevented cyber attacks. And now, he turned to Richard, his expression hardening slightly. "I'm very interested in hearing how Quantum Solutions plans to retain such a valuable asset." Richard's mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. The same man who'd been ready to fire me 20 minutes ago now looked like he was about to pass out. I gathered my papers slowly, deliberately. "I think we should adjourn for now. Everyone needs time to process this information." I headed toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Mr. Palmer, that a major proposal you dismissed. It's actually a prototype for my next major security innovation, one that Jang Technologies has already expressed interest in licensing at their highest tier. I believe," Marcus nodded, barely concealing his smirk. "I'll be in my office," I continued, "when you're ready to discuss my future at Quantum Solutions." Though I should warn you, I allowed myself a small smile. My consulting rates as the Ghosts are considerably higher than my current salary. As I walked out of the conference room, leaving behind the stunned silence and Richard's ashen face, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. 5 years of hiding, of downplaying my abilities had come to an end. But this wasn't the end of my story. No, this was just the beginning of something much bigger, because Richard Palmer had done more than just threaten my job. He reminded me why I started this journey in the first place. And now that my identity was out, it was time to show exactly what I could do. When I wasn't hiding anymore, the next few weeks would change everything. Not just for me, but for the entire industry. Richard Palmer had no idea what he just unleashed, but he was about to find out. The next morning, I arrived at Quantum Solutions to find the office transformed gone. Was the quiet anonymity I cultivated for 5 years. Instead, whispers followed me through the corridors, and wide-eyed developers practically jumped out of my way as I walked to my modest cubicle. "The Ghost actually works here. Did you hear what happened in the executive meeting?" Palmer tried to fire the most valuable developer in Silicon Valley. I smiled slightly, remembering Richard Palmer's face when he'd realized his mistake, but I knew this was just the beginning. Richard wasn't the type to accept defeat. Gracefully, as if on cue, Jennifer, our VP of Engineering, appeared at my desk. "Alex," she said, her usual professional demeanor tinged with excitement. "Emergency board meeting in 30 minutes. Richard's called in every board number." I nodded, already expecting this. "Let me guess, he's trying to save his position. He's been on calls all night, Jennifer confirmed, lowering her voice. Word is he's painting you as a security risk, claiming you've been deceiving the company, potentially stealing intellectual property. I couldn't help but laugh. Interesting strategy. He's accusing the ghost of stealing from the ghost. Jennifer's eyes sparkled with amusement. I thought you might find that funny. But Alex, her expression turned serious. He's desperate, and desperate people can be dangerous. She was right. Of course, I'd seen enough corporate politics to know that. Richard wouldn't go down without a fight. But then again, I hadn't spent 5 years building my secret identity without planning for every contingency. Don't worry. I assured her, pulling out my laptop. I came prepared. The boardroom looked different today, instead of the usual polite disinterest. Every board member sat alert, their eyes following me as I took my seat. Richard stood at the head of the table. His expensive suit couldn't hide the signs of his sleepless night members of the board. Richard began, his voice carrying a practiced gravity. We face an unprecedented situation yesterday. We discovered that an employee has been operating under false pretenses, potentially compromising our security and intellectual property. I sat quietly watching him dig his own grave, while Alex Chen has admitted to being the developer known as the Ghost. Richard continued, This raises serious concerns. He's been selling similar software to our competitors while maintaining access to our systems. This is a clear conflict of interest, possibly corporate espionage. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Richard pressed on, growing more confident. Furthermore, his deception about his capabilities raises questions about his loyalty and trustworthiness. I recommend immediate termination and a full security audit of all systems. He's touched. The room fell silent. Richard smiled, thinking he'd won. Then I opened my laptop. Interesting perspective, Mr. Palmer, I said, connecting to the room's display system. But I think we should review some facts. The screen came to life, showing a complex diagram of interconnected systems. This is quantum security infrastructure. I explained the same one we licensed from my alter ego. The Ghost noticed anything interesting about the architecture. One of the board members, Dr. Sarah Chin, no relation, leaned forward as the board's technical expert. She immediately saw what I was highlighting these systems. She murmured, They're designed to be completely transparent. Every access, every modification, every line of code is logged and verified through multiple independent channels. I nodded exactly, and here's something even more interesting. I pulled up another screen showing access logs. Every piece of software I've developed as the Ghost has the same architecture, complete transparency, perfect accountability. Richard's smile faltered. In fact, I continued, Let's look at the access logs for the past 6 months since Mr. Palmer became CEO. The screen, filled with data color-coded entries, showed every interaction with the company's systems. The green entries are legitimate business operations. I explained the yellow ones are attempted unauthorized access, and the red ones, I paused for effect, are successful breaches. The board members leaned forward, their eyes fixed on the cluster of red entries that had appeared in the last month. Interesting pattern, isn't it? I mused. No red entries for 5 years. Then suddenly multiple breaches, all traced back to... I clicked a button, and a new window appeared showing detailed access logs. An executive account. Your account, Mr. Palmer. Richard's face went from pale to ashen. That's impossible. I was conducting routine security audits at 2 a.m. I asked mildly, accessing our competitors, client lists, downloading proprietary trading algorithms. I turned to the board. I have the complete logs here, showing every file, accessed every piece of data downloaded. I also have evidence of similar patterns from Mr. Palmer's previous company, where he was quietly asked to resign after a series of mysterious data leaks. The boardroom erupted in chaos. Richard tried to speak, but Dr. Chen cut him off. Mr. Palmer, she said, her voice sharp, are you saying you didn't know our systems tracked every access at this level? Richard stammered. Of course he didn't, I said quietly, because he never actually read the documentation for the security systems. he claimed to understand so well he was too busy trying to find ways to exploit them. I stood up, walking to the front of the room. Members of the board, I've spent 5 years building and protecting quantum systems, both as Alex Chin and as the Ghost. Yes, I maintain my anonymity, but not to deceive. I did it to stay connected to the real challenges developers face to build better solutions. I pulled up one final screen showing a new system architecture. This is what I was trying to present yesterday before Mr. Palmer dismissed it as a metro work. It's a new security paradigm that could revolutionize how we protect corporate data. John Technologies has already offered to be our first client. The board members studied the diagram with growing excitement. Even through the technical complexity, they could see the potential. But why reveal yourself now? Dr. Chen asked. Why not stay anonymous? I looked directly at Richard, who had slumped in his chair, because sometimes the best way to protect something is to step into the light and defend it openly. Mr. Palmer showed me that hiding my capabilities, even for good reasons, can allow the wrong people to gain power. The next hour was a blur of discussions, votes, and decisions. By the end, Richard Palmer was escorted out of the building by security. His company phone and laptop already locked down by the very systems he tried to breach. But that was just the beginning. Over the next 6 months, I led Quantum Solutions through a transformation as both the public face of our security division and the developers still known as the Ghost. I introduced a new era of transparent, accountable corporate security. Our stock price tripled, other companies seeing our success began adopting our approach to security and corporate transparency. Richard Palmer became a cautionary tale in Silicon Valley, a CEO who tried to fire his company's most valuable asset because he was too arrogant to look beyond appearances. Jennifer became our new CEO, her years of quiet competence finally recognized. Under her leadership, we expanded our mission beyond just corporate security. We started an initiative to teach coding to underprivileged students, showing them that in technology, ability matters more than appearance or title. As for me, I kept my modest cubicle. Though now it's more of a symbol than a necessity, I still review junior developers' code offering suggestions and encouragement. But I also lead our most ambitious projects, showing that you don't need a corner office to change the world. Sometimes late at night, when I'm coding, I think about that morning in the conference room, about Richard Palmer sneering at a major work, not realizing he was revealing his own incompetence, about how his attempt to humiliate me ended up transforming not just Quantum Solutions, but the entire industry's approach to security and transparency. Last week, I received an email from Richard. He's been struggling to find work in the tech industry, his reputation tainted by the scandal. He was asking for a chance to apologize, to explain himself. I thought about it for a long time before replying. My response was simple. Mr. Palmer, your access attempt has been logged, but unlike last time, I'm not going to stop you from making your case. After all, transparency and accountability were always the point. My calendar is open next week. Come prepared to learn, not just apologize, Alex Chin the Ghost. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone's career. It's about giving them a chance to learn from their mistakes while you continue building something greater than they ever imagined. The legend of the Ghost lives on in Silicon Valley. But now, it's not just about anonymous brilliant code. It's about the power of staying true to your principles, even when it means stepping out of the shadows. It's about proving that real innovation doesn't come from corner offices and expensive suits, but from people who care enough to build something that matters. As for Quantum Solutions, we're just getting started. The next generation of security solutions is already in development. And this time, I'm proud to have my real name on them because sometimes the quietest person in the room isn't just writing code. They're revolutionizing an industry. They're changing the world. They're showing that the best way to fight arrogance and deception isn't with more of the same, but with transparency, competence, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even if it means revealing who you really are.